So Gary, I appreciate you joining us, and I'm going to go through kind of your career, which has been several decades now. And I know
Yes.
you started out at in Kingston, New York, at a plating shop up there. But was that was at the Utility Platers? So was
Utility.
that was your very first foray into the finishing industry at all?
Yes, I took that job right out of college.
Mm.
The the gentleman at college had gotten this request in from Utility Platers looking for a chemist, and they called me, and I thought, that sounds interesting. So I went up and looked the place over. When I started, they talked about all their barrel plating. I had no idea what barrel plating was at that time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, going back, because you had a degree in chemistry, industrial chemistry. You're a graduate of that, but had you known anything about the electroplating finishing industry at all before
No,
starting there?
no,
Okay,
nothing.
right, you're right,
But you learn
and
quick.
right, yeah. Tell us about that. Like I said, that would have been 1963, right? 1963 when you got out of
Yes, I
college.
got out of school in 1963. I worked at Utility for 5 years. We
Mm,
had cyanide zinc.
mm,
We had some cadmium and beryl nickel. We had a decorative, actually a semi-bright copper nickel chrome line on zinc die castings for IBM. IBM had a big plant in the area in Kingston, and
okay.
that was one of our big customers. Another one was Rotron up in Woodstock. That they're well known in the industry for making fans, rotary fans.
Oh, cool.
That
Yeah.
was a big customer. We
And
went
what were
through
your
periods.
responsibilities? I was going to say, go ahead. Oh, so go ahead. Finish that. Yeah.
We went through periods where nickel anodes were hard to get, but
Mm.
because Rotron had so many military contracts, we were able to get all the nickel slab anodes we needed for our bright nickel tank.
Right.
So that
Right.
helped.
And what were your general? You were the chemist there, but what were your general responsibilities with all of that?
Analyze the tanks and keep them in balance. I also learned how to change filters. I learned a little bit about rack design and rack manufacture.
Mm. Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
that was pretty
Yeah.
much it. Mostly chemical analysis and some maintenance.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I was going to ask you. I guess you started out there, didn't know that much about electroplating and such. Who were some of the? I always like to ask people, who were some of the mentors there at the facility that maybe helped you out a little bit and kind of taught you a lot of the things you needed to know?
Oh, at Utility?
Yeah, at Utility. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been probably the owner at the time, Bert Ellis.
Mm.
We had some excellent sales reps that came in, one of which was interesting. Our sales rep at the time from Enthone was a gentleman named Frank Schneiders,
Mm.
who went on to be the president of Enthone.
Mm.
And years later, when I went down to interview for the sales job at Enthone, I ran into Frank in the hall. I said, Frank Siders, hi, how are you? And I'm Gary Burton. Do you remember me? Oh, yeah, you were a kid from Utility that always had holes in his pants. So we
Right.
struck a
So
chord there even before the interview started.
right.
Frank was a huge mentor, taught
Mm.
me a lot. It was
Great.
a gentleman from R.O. Hall when they were still
Hmm.
around, Ed Quinlan. He and his tech service people were very helpful.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
then I got to know the
Yeah.
people at Allied Research. It was
Well, I
still
was going to ask
Allied
you first. For you, so you were at Utility Platers for 5 or 6 years. Is that right? About
5 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you like it? I mean, after you got to know everything, I mean, did you like the industry? Apparently, you spent the whole time in it, but is that something you immediately thought this is a career I want
It
to
was
be in? Or
very interesting, yeah, and I got to use my chemical skills and my overall curiosity.
Mm.
and ability to play with things and make them work. Yeah, I was I was drawn into the industry.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like, and you never left it there. Yeah. So, like I said, you were there for a couple years at the shop, and then you kind of switched and went on to the supplier side. Tell us about that. How'd that work?
Yes, it was Allied Research at the time. Excuse me. And I was hired to be tech service and served basically the whole Northeast and tech service.
Mm.
Um, I would say, if you're going to ask that same question about mentors, uh,
Oh yeah.
Jack Horner
Mm.
was
Hmm.
a huge name in the industry, very, very smart and excellent educator. Jack probably taught many people, including me, a lot about metal finishing. Uh,
Right.
and it was when I was at Allied Research / Allied Kelite that I would do tech service calls on electroformers.
Mm.
Allied had the Barrett sulfamate nickel at the time, which was the standard of the industry for
Mm.
electroforming. And that's where I learned quite a bit about that field. So the more I got into this crazy field, the more I learned and the more interesting it has become.
Right. Right. I was gonna say. I guess it gave you a chance to kind of travel around and visit other shops, right, and get to
Yes,
meet the people there. I mean, that had to be
yeah,
great. To some of the people that have been there for long times, and tell us about
yes.
that of meeting a lot of those people there.
Made many calls in New Jersey, Connecticut, New York State. In fact, I was in tech service when I came up here to GW Lisk on a tech
Hmm.
service call back in 1970, and that was before.
Right. Wow.
There's nobody working here that was here back then.
Back then. Wow. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna say that was a long time ago.
Um,
And then yeah.
so this was kind of an interesting place. It's a captive shop,
Hmm.
uh, small
What?
shop.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What? Before we get to that, I was gonna say because you've been with the GW List since almost 15 years now. Get right about
15 years. My
2010. Yeah.
anniversary was in April. Yes.
Wow. Okay. But let's follow the path here. So, like I said, Allied Research,
Okay.
Kelite, and then Enthone. How did that work out for you? You joined them, like I said, after
Enthone had
almost.
an opening
Hmm.
for sales. By that time, I had gotten a sales territory at Allied Kelite,
Mm.
and things were going fairly well, but there were some things that were going on that didn't really suit me.
Right.
Enthone had an opening in upstate New York to replace another true legend in the industry back then.
Mm.
And I went down and had that interview. They hired me, and I was there for 25 years.
Yeah. I was gonna say
I
25
had
years,
been
and
with
again,
Allied
yeah,
Kelite for 17. I spent
17.
25 years at Enthone.
Right. And again, was it the same basic area you were covering? A lot of the, or I guess you came a little bit more west, right, into Pennsylvania, Ohio, those type of areas as well.
Ultimately, yes, when I started at Enthone, my sales territory was central New York.
Mm.
And then as the industry changed and the plating shops became fewer and farther between, my territory grew to the point at the end that my territory included all of New York State,
Mm.
the Erie section, Pennsylvania down into Pittsburgh,
Right.
and
Right.
then the eastern part of Ohio, Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland area. Yeah, heavy area there. It's funny. Take us back. What was the role of a district manager going into these shops back then, as compared to today? But what were some of the things that they were asking you to do, or how were you helping your customers in those days?
As district manager,
Yeah. Mhm.
I think that's what you said. Yes,
Yeah.
I would travel with all the guys in a district. The first district manager I had was for the southeast district, so we picked up and moved to Marietta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, and I covered the southeast. And we had 6 salesmen, I think, and a couple of tech servicemen.
Right.
And I would do the administrative stuff and then travel with the guys throughout the Southeast.
Okay. Yeah. Pretty much half the country you're then now looking at there. And what type
Yeah,
of products? Yeah. What type of services was Enthone? What lines were they in at that time? What were they offering?
Enthone had decorative zinc. We had electroless nickel,
Right.
copper,
Mm, right. Yeah. I was going to say just
cyanide
kind of that
copper.
whole. Yeah. So
Yeah,
really from 1968 until 2010, which 30, gosh, oh, well over 30 years, right, of being on
yeah,
the service
22
side,
years.
on the supplier side. Take me back. I mean, what were some of the biggest differences from when you got into that, when you got into the service industry with them in 68, and then, when you left there in 2010, how did it change in your eyes? How did things
Oh
change
gosh,
around?
the technology. Well, we went from cyanide zinc
Mhm.
to loci to alkaline to bright acid zinc. Uh, Rojas came along. We went from hexavalent chromates to trivalent passivates.
Mm,
Oh
wow.
boy.
Yeah, just really, 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 because I know, like I said, it seems like in this day and age, a lot of shops really do rely on the reps from the suppliers to really help them out a lot.
Yes.
Was that the case back then? Were they
Yeah.
really, yeah, asking you to solve some issues that,
Hmm.
that they couldn't. It's kind of the same issues, right, that were coming up back then, even.
Very much so.
Yeah. And then, yeah, like I said, and then you left Enthone and you joined GW Lisk. Like I said, a company you had known for many, many, many years, right? How did that all come about? That
Yes.
you went back to the finishing side, back to the applicator side.
Enthone decided it was time for some of us to retire,
Hmm.
and GW Lisk had an opening. When I first started at Lisk as an employee, um, I was an electroless nickel plater. It was kind of
Okay.
fun because I got to play with all the chemicals that I had been using, or play with all the chemicals I had been selling for all these
Right.
years.
Oh,
And
right.
so that was kind of fun and interesting, but I knew a lot about it. And at Lisk, I knew enough about all the plating processes so I could plate the EN, the sulfamate nickel, which we still have,
Mm,
um, phosphate, zinc
gotcha.
nickel, alkaline zinc nickel, which we have.
Wow. Wow.
I learned
Yeah.
about passivating because we had never allied, excuse me, neither allied nor Enthone had any
Done.
passivate
Had that.
chemicals. So I got to
Right.
learn about passivate since I've been here.
Right. Take a few moments and tell us about GW Lisk for people who may not know all that you all do and what kind of company that is there.
Okay. Again, we manufacture control valves,
Mhm.
solenoids, what have you, a lot for the aerospace industry, a lot for the automotive industry.
Mm, right. Yeah.
Some,
Put all this. Yeah. And then so when like I said in 2010 when you joined there, was that really the first time that you were actually hired to do plating, right? I mean, before you were a chemist with utility,
right,
right? And then
right.
in the sales side. So was it really your first time to doing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the
And was
first
it?
time
Were you
I
nervous
actually got.
about it, or nervous about doing that, or
No, no, I was looking for it. As I said, I was looking forward to me, it was going to be fun.
right?
Actually work with the chemicals that I've been telling people how to use all these years. And now I had to shut up and prove myself and do it myself.
Right, right. Yeah, like I said, you've been here for over 15 years now, right? I guess,
It's
and
15 years,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. And I guess like I said, you're kind of an old hat at this when you joined, but again, who were some of the people at GW List that kind of helped you? Anybody that kind of stands out that you came back to join and that really helped you out. I don't know if you needed a mentor at that time, but really just sort of really supported you at that time there.
There was a gentleman that was just coming on as head of the plating named Arno Biebernitz. Arno and I got to be very close for a number of reasons. But I'd say he helped me and I helped him through the years. And
right. Yeah.
Good. Probably Arno was the biggest one.
Right. Yeah. And so you are, if you mind me asking, you're what, 81 this year? Is that right? Yeah. and you're still working. Is it just a labor of love of doing that, of just kind of keeping busy and something you love doing? Tell me about that.
If I stayed home all the time, I'd probably drive my wife crazy.
Right.
But we're training someone now. Now, after the first 5 years at Lisk, I went into the lab and took over running the lab, and that's what I do now.
That's what
so I'm in control of all the plating processes.
Right. Kind of full circle, right? Kind of where you started a little bit before with that.
Exactly. Starting in the lab. I'm in the lab now, yes.
Right. I was gonna say it comes back to it. You never forget how to do it. I guess that's the fun part.
Yes.
Sure, it's different now with all the new technology and equipment they've got to help you do that now.
It's not really funny, but we have an AA machine. When I was in college, AA hadn't been invented yet, or at least perfected yet.
So what is that? What is AA with that?
Alcohol, yeah. Atomic absorption.
Atomic absorption. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And but now you have that now. Great tool. I guess great tool to. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of interesting. Go ahead. Yeah.
Again, talk about technology. That's one of the upgrades that really helps control these plating processes.
Right.
Not supposed to say baths, it's processes.
Processes, right?
Yes.
Right. And it's funny. Like I said, you've been in the industry for 60 some years. It seems like, right? I mean, it's about that 62.
62 years.
Yeah, 62 years with that. Anybody? Any words of advice for somebody who's getting into the industry? Maybe like how you got in it as a chemist or as a plating. Any advice you would give to them that, do's and don'ts or things like that you've learned over the years, or you look back and say, I wish I had done this, or you look back and say, that was smart for me to do that. I mean, anything that you would give them any wise advice?
The thing I like to tell people that are just coming in, like our new platers that come in, don't be scared of the chemicals. Respect them, but don't be afraid of them. If you wear the proper PPE and treat them with respect, you'll be fine. But you don't have to, be totally frightened by them, scared. And that's what I tell people to come to work here and just have fun. You're going to learn a lot.
Right. Seems like every day's different on a lot of things sometimes,
yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
And
the
thing about working at Lisk, it's a captive shop. So you plate something and then you get to see what happens to that little piece after you plate it. You see it get assembled. Now, we had an incident a few years ago. Remember the plane that had to land on the Hudson River in New York City?
Yes, definitely, yes.
The devices that he had to use to control that plane is our product.
Wow.
So Lisk had a big hand in helping that plane land safely.
Great. Yeah. And it worked, and it continues to work, and that's the great thing.
Yes.
You talk about critical components, right?
Yes.
You got to take that job very seriously when you're working with those parts, and then you all manufacturing those parts.
Absolutely.
That's something.
It's not just a piece that you're plating. It's something that's going to be part of something much greater. Yeah.
Right. Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. And like you said, you said you're training someone to take over for you. Does that mean you're looking to wind down, or are you still going to be working there?
I'll still be here at least till the end of this year and possibly beyond.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that'd be good. And I guess, like you said, bringing people on and imparting your wisdom to these people. And that's, I guess some of these people, they're going to look at you as their mentor, right? That's got to be a nice feeling sometimes to
Yeah.
know that you're giving right back what you got when you first started out.
Right. Right. And some you can teach people what you remember to teach them. But there's always things that they're going to pick up on their own.